Yo, what's up everybody? We got more draft grades coming at you here. Let me first repeat the ground rules though. Number one, I am grading on somewhat of a stingy scale here, not unlike my Madden roster. I want grades and ratings at the top, the A grades, to really set themselves apart so you can see what picks I really loved. So I don't want to see any comments accusing me of sleeping or hating on players because I gave them a C grade. A C here basically means I thought the pick was solid. I was fine with it. And then the other rule, obviously, everyone has their own opinions, and I respect all of your opinions about these players and where they should have gone, but I'm judging value here off of my own draft board, so not necessarily where the mass majority of you may have had them. So you will see under each player's name where I valued each player heading into the draft. So I have the Tampa Bay Bucks here, and I actually wasn't super high on this team's draft or a ton of the teams in this division here, especially given the competitiveness of the NFC. And when you look at some of the higher grades that my last two divisional grades had gotten, a lot of really good drafts in the NFC already. So the Bucks trade down, which is a good move, and then they take Vita Vea. I thought it was fine. You know, I think this team could really use another superstar player on this defense. You know, Gerald McCoy is their best defender, but he's getting older, and you can only do so much from that D-line position. You know, I think Vita Vea is going to really eat up blocks, create some dominance up front that this team did need. So I don't hate this pick, but for me, Derwin James was sitting there. It's a big need. This team, did an okay job addressing the secondary, but I didn't love what they did. So, I thought this pick was fine. It's going to help open some things up for those very fast linebackers that they have. It's going to create some nice things for Gerald McCoy as well. So it could definitely work out. But my pick would have been Derwin James. And then the second round, like I said, we are going off of my own grades. And personally, I am very low on Ronald Jones. He screams Christine Michael to me. If you remember from a few years ago, he was the sparky freak athlete guy. But with Ronald Jones, I don't see a ton of vision or finesse to his game. He does have some good power for his size, but he's only about 205 pounds, so he's not going to be a power runner in the NFL. I also, it was unfortunate that we didn't get any workout grades to see how truly athletic he is. But, I thought his tape was fine. I had a third, fourth round grade on him in a really good running back class. And to take Ronald Jones where they did ahead of other running backs, I thought this was one of the worst picks in the entire draft. And he might work out and prove me wrong, but, based on my evaluation, I thought it was a pretty bad pick. You had Darius Geis sitting there, for example, among with a lot of other running backs that I had ranked ahead of him. I had Ronald Jones as my 13th running back in this class. And then at pick 53, I liked this one. MJ Stewart is a playmaker. I tweeted out that, the Bucks took two of the better playmaking defensive backs, Jordan Whitehead being another one. We'll talk about him in a sec. They took some ball hawks and some people that can strip the ball and play good in run defense in the secondary. This defense needs people that can create turnovers. It's something they've really struggled with, especially given how much Jameis Winston gives the ball to the other team. You need those players to get it back. So I like MJ Stewart. I think he'll start in the slot for this team and could have a similar impact in his first year that someone like Desmond King had for the Chargers last year in the slot. But then they take Carlton Davis. I was not a fan of Carlton Davis. He seems to me like that prototypical, super raw, stiff, tall corner that you're just drafting off of upside because he's big. He showed some flashes, but to me, this was way too early for Carlton Davis. I get that there weren't a lot of big corners in this draft, so you had to reach for one, but I just don't see him turning into a good player. The hit rate on these big corners, which has been a big trend lately, is these teams trying to get big at corner. The hit rate on these corners, if you go back and look, especially once you get to outside of the first round, early second, the hit rate's very low, and this just seems like a reach to me, but we'll see. And then third round, they take Alex Kappa. He's going to play somewhere on this offensive line. I like Kappa a lot. They had success when they went with kind of a similar prospect in Ollie Marpet a while ago. I don't think Kappa's as big of a freak as Marpet was, but kind of the same concept there. You just take a really smart, physical O-lineman and figure out later where he's going to play. He did play tackle at Humboldt. I think he's probably a guard for this team. In the 4th round, I talked about Jordan Whitehead as a good playmaker. I really like Jordan Whitehead. His tape is fantastic. You know, he's going to play as sort of that strong safety, nickel corner, box, bandit, safety, all that jazz. But just a playmaker in the secondary, something this team needs a lot. So I like that pick. And then the 5th round, they take Justin Watson. I hadn't evaluated him. You know, he had a really good workout at his pro day, but when I went and watched a brief amount of his film, he looked a little slower on tape, but a really surprisingly good athlete. But this team's pretty set at wideout, so, you know, he's going to be pretty buried there. And there were a lot of really good receivers available, but it's fine. It was an okay pick, I thought. And then 6th round, Jack Sitchie to the Bucks. I see him as a 3rd or 4th linebacker on your team, a rotational run defender and special teams impact. So overall, I didn't love the Bucs draft. I don't think they did a whole lot to really help Jameis Winston. I guess that really depends on what you think of Ronald Jones, but I don't see the run game improving here. I don't see the pass protection getting too much better. I like the Kappa pick, but I don't think that's going to save this team. And then defensively, they got a few nice pieces. Vita Vea should help some things out. MJ Stewart, I think, is going to help the run defense a little bit as a corner. But I don't think this team got a whole lot better in a conference where everybody seemingly is prepared to try and win a Super Bowl this year in this conference. So next we got the Falcons here. Not a ton of picks for the Falcons, but took Calvin Ridley in the 1st. Now, I like Calvin Ridley. I don't love him. He was my 4th wide receiver, but this was just a really nice luxury pick for the Falcons. They get an extra deep threat. A similar style of player to, I guess, what they had in Taylor Gabriel, who left a couple years ago, and the offense was clearly not the same without him. So, they felt like they needed some more speed in this receiving core. Julio Jones is starting to get up there in age. He's probably got 2 or 3 more elite years left. So this was a pretty solid pick, I thought, the Calvin Ridley pick. Nice thing about Ridley compared to some of the other guys is he was definitely one of the better if not the best impact receiver, a guy who's going to come in and be ready right away, especially when you compare him to like DJ Moore, who went in the 1st, who's got the higher upside, but probably not as good right away. And then the 2nd round, really good value pick here, Isaiah Oliver, in a cornerback class where it was hard to find talent in players taller than 6 feet. Isaiah Oliver was really, really probably the best 6-foot corner and above, at least when you're considering guys who have the upside to be a true number 1 outside cover guy. He was the best corner, arguably, of that Colorado secondary that had Chidobe Awuzie and Witherspoon, who are both good NFL players. So I like this pick a lot. He may not actually play a lot in the 1st year because they have some good corners here in Atlanta, but this team basically just went value with these first couple picks. I think they hit the nail on the head with Oliver. 3rd round, Deidrin Senat. My comparison for him was Grady Jarrett. I love my undersized, quote-unquote, defensive tackles, even though I think that's, something that is dying. So the Raiders go with an undersized D tackle as well in the 2nd round. So teams seem to be catching on that those smaller guys are actually an advantage to get that leverage. They tend to have quicker feet. If you look at some of the best D tackles in the game, a lot of them are quote-unquote undersized. Mike Daniels, Geno Atkins, Aaron Donald, Grady Jarrett for this very Falcons team. So I like this Deidrin Senat pick. And then the 4th round, they took one of the more fun players to watch, Ito Smith. He's not just a scat back. He's got some power and balance to his game. This gives them a long-term option potentially to replace Tevin Coleman, I believe, that they probably are not going to re-sign when his contract is up, which is either this year or next year. I'm not sure he's going to do a whole lot in his 1st year, but definitely someone to keep an eye on if one of those running backs gets injured. I think he could step in and be an impact on this team right away. And then the 6th round, they grabbed a few guys that I hadn't evaluated. A receiver they like out of LSU in the 6th round. Pretty loaded receiver depth chart, so he's going to be a project. And then another project at linebacker. This team's had success going with athleticism and youth in that linebacker group, so they continue that trend with an athletic linebacker here out of Duke, was it? Or Yale? I think it's Yale. We got the Panthers draft. Another one that I thought was just fine, according to my own rankings, but they took DJ Moore in the 1st, looking for that Steve Smith replacement, and they may have found it. I like DJ Moore a lot. And then the second round, they took a great value in Dante Jackson. It's a little smaller, but possibly the fastest and quickest player in this entire class. It's a secondary that needs help, so he might see the field right away. The third round, they grabbed Rashawn Golden, who I had a priority grade on as a corner, but they announced him as a safety. I had written in my notes that if he moved to safety, I'd be higher on him. So, he probably was somewhere around 5th, 6th round, based on my evaluations as a safety. This team needs some safety help, so fine pick, I guess. And then 4th round, they had a couple picks here. Ian Thomas, I was not nearly as high on. I felt like people were kind of reaching, trying to find that steal of a tight end in a class that was not a good tight end class, in my opinion. I think he could be fine. I think he has the upside of a number 2 tight end who you're comfortable throwing the ball, can block a little bit, but really doesn't have any elite traits. I think he's a lot slower than people want him to be. So he's fine for this team. He's going to fill out that depth chart at tight end, but I don't think he's Greg Olson's replacement, which I've started to hear, and I'm not on board with that. 136, they took Marquise Haynes, who's basically a project edge rusher out of Ole Miss. I was concerned about him because he was really light, 236, but he didn't really have good workout grades either. So if you're not an uber athlete at this point, I'd rather take a more polished edge rusher like a Duke Ejiofor here, but they like him, could work out. They've done well developing D linemen there. And then 5th round, they take Jermaine Carter, linebacker. I didn't evaluate. Seems fine. 7th round, though, they take Andre Smith, who I think is a significantly better player than Jermaine Carter. Higher upside, better impact. One of my favorite linebackers in this class. I compared him to Denzel Perriman for the Chargers, kind of a shorter, stockier linebacker, but with some really good straight line speed and can absolutely light you up. One of the better hitters in this class. So I think they got a steal there in Andre Smith. And then they take the lineman out of Miami who played on a loaded front, but has some upside, I suppose, in Kendrick Norton. And I wrote NA there, but I actually had a PFA, priority free agent grade, on Norton. So again, just kind of an average draft for the Panthers. They took the players they liked, but I didn't see any true direction with this team. But it's not really a team that needs direction. They just need to fill out the margins of their roster and do the best they can to make this offense better and sustain this good defense. So just kind of a balanced, okay draft here for the Panthers. And then the Saints here, who had some highs and lows in this draft, in my opinion. In the first round, they make the big move to move up to 14, and this is a all or nothing move here. That's a lot to give up for a defensive player. Davenport has as much upside as any defender in this entire class, and I actually really like the fit here. He's going to have a clear path to becoming a really good edge rusher. That said, he pretty much at this point has to become DeMarcus Ware, Cameron Wake as a really good edge rusher to be worth what this team gave up to do that. And I kind of lean on the side of he's going to make it work. I had him as the 17th best player in this class, make that 19th. So kind of a wait and see pick there for Davenport. And then the third round, this one was kind of a head scratcher for me. Traquan Smith, a super raw, a decent athlete at 6'3", 200 pounds. But you look at the receivers that fell in this draft. I had Traquan Smith as the 40th receiver in this class. Clearly the Saints like him. I'm not going to really question what they saw in him. But this one was really just about the receivers that fell. To take Traquan Smith here in the third round, when you could have taken, for one, Jamon Moore, who's a receiver I loved here. But, 5th, 6th round, Javon Wims, Equanimous St. Brown is a raw project guy, which it's not like Traquan Smith's going to see the field all that much anyway. And there's really a large list of players that could have probably been about exactly what they wanted. They didn't know that those receivers were going to fall most likely, but, just not a great pick there, in my opinion, for the Saints. 4th round, they grab Rick Leonard, kind of a project tackle. They need someone to develop now that Streif is gone. But this offensive line is more or less set as it is right now. So a good depth play there. And then the 5th round, really good pick here, possibly their best pick. Natrell Jamerson out of Wisconsin. Comes out, runs a 4.4 at the combine, has pretty good tape as a center fielder. Not a lot of good true center fielders in this class. We saw the success this team had last year with developing Marcus Williams. Kind of a similar play here. I think Jamerson's going to play a good bit, at least as the third safety here in dime packages and stuff, which is a very big role in the modern NFL. 6th round, they took Cameron Moore out of Boston College, kind of a well-balanced corner to fill out the depth there. May or may not make the team. It's a pretty good secondary. Boston Scott, so I give this a C. It's more of a C+. I didn't evaluate him until after. He wasn't on my board, but I just like the idea. They get a smaller receiving style back, a scat back, trying to kind of find that Darren Sproles role here for this team, that they're kind of constantly trying to find different receivers who can do different things out of the backfield, running backs rather. It's not like they need him. They got Kamara and Ingram right now. Both catch the ball. Well, Kamara catches extremely well. Ingram can catch the ball at times. But just a fun third piece that you get here in the 6th round. And then 7th round, slam dunk pick here for me, Will Clapp. They got Max Unger at center, but he's both getting older and has injury problems. So you take a potential plug-and-play center, if anything were to happen to Unger, which frankly might actually be a likely scenario, and you take a guy I thought was one of the better centers in this class. I had him as the 5th center and a 4th round grade. He's a hometown guy from Louisiana. Great pick. I could see Will Clapp being this team's center for the next 6 to 10 years. Just seems like that good of a fit. We'll see how it all plays out. So again, pretty solid draft here for the Saints. Similar to the Panthers, just trying to fill out their margins. They did make that aggressive move to try and get the superstar with Marcus Davenport. I like the idea. I don't know if that was the right move to make, but only time will tell with the Saints. All 4 of these teams think they have a chance to win this division. Personally, I don't think any one of these drafts really set itself apart as something that was going to really set one team ahead of another. It's a big cluster of a division. So we'll see how this all plays out. We're going to head over and do the NFC West next, our last NFC team, and then we'll go over and talk about the AFC. So like the video. If you enjoyed, guys, make sure you check out my Twitter at @TFG_football. Cheers. We'll see you next time.